Northern Ireland benefited significantly from international support and involvement in the peace process, and as a result, we feel the responsibility to share the lessons. As Ireland enters a more stable post-conflict situation, we are willing to share our perspective, which may be helpful in other contexts and situations around the world. We share our experiences with a degree of humility and recognise that we cannot be complacent, as many challenges remain in creating a truly inclusive society. It is not a case of problems solved. Obstacles still remain for reconciliation, peace and shared prosperity. Future work is needed to reach agreement on a number of outstanding issues. Any peace process will require long-term and sustained political engagement. It is rare that the drivers of a conflict can be resolved in one generation. Therefore, those of us committed to peace must recognise that we are engaging for life. Set against this reality, it is vital that the principles and objectives of any agreement continue to act as the foundation and framework by which peace and security for all people is achieved. In closing, I might suggest some areas for consideration in Nigeria, if only to stimulate some discussion. We know from our experience that the road to peace in any situation will involve a process where both sides will have to listen to each other and to be open to change. Negotiation is not about victory, but compromise. It requires strong leadership, broad consultation, brave politicians who share a long-term vision of what the light at the end of the tunnel might mean for everybody involved. Most importantly, perhaps, it should be your gift to those who will inherit this country in the future. Thank you.
You talked about our situation in Nigeria, and you mentioned three specific cases: the Fulani farmers cases, the Niger Delta, and then the situation nearer home here in the northeast. The thing is, these are very different kinds of conflicts. So how do we engage this kind of issues when identity tends to trump sober reflection about issues?
On the different conflicts in Nigeria, I think the first thing to say is Nigeria is a much more peaceful place when you come here than you expect from outside. Because the image of Nigeria is captured by the insurgency in the northeast, in this part of the country. That is the headlines on the BBC. That is what media does, and especially social media. I think Nigeria has a story. You owe yourselves a positive story to tell how good things are here. But unfortunately, it is the wrong side that comes out in the media.
To what extent do you feel technology, and mostly with social media and smartphones and stuff, to what extent do you feel these things can aid in peace and in telling our stories the way we find them?
So I think social media can be very powerful in getting the First Lady of the United States to focus on Nigeria, but it can also, if it is not backed up responsibly, it can be misleading. And I think the challenge is people are not reading newspapers, they're not reading long articles, they're finding those tidbits of information and extrapolating those stories into what is comfortable for them to understand. So I think as educators, as journalists, and I know you have a desire to become a writer, I think you have to get that deeper message out, and I think that's the challenge.
Northern Ireland, there were issues with marginalization, right? That's something that's also pretty common here in Nigeria. How do you reconcile this?
I grew up in Northern Ireland feeling I was marginalised. And once you feel you're marginalised, it's very easy for others to feed that sense of insecurity. One way to understand it is you have to talk to the people who you believe are marginalising you, and you have to have those cross-community, because If we don't communicate, then we believe everything we want to believe about ourselves, and often we are wrong. But if you feel marginalised, test that. Are you really marginalised? And what are your options? Your options have to be peaceful, democratic options in Nigeria, and you have to find a way forward with that. And I think when talking to this group, you are all the young people. In our country, our Prime Minister is 37. I believe the President of France is about the same age, 1 or 2 years. We have seen in Europe younger people who can communicate with your age group becoming the leaders of their country. Most of your leaders are older than me. And I just ask myself, am I too old to change? I mean, I know how I would like things done, but young people wanted things done at a different pace, in a different way, using technology. So maybe we need to see younger leaders in Africa. It's not just a Nigerian story, but when we start to see leaders in Africa that are in their 30s, then I think we'll start to see some real changes.